So reproduction of any work by a teacher or a pupil in the course of instruction. So while I'm delivering a lecture, if I'm reproducing somebody's copyrighted work, if, for example, I photocopy some excerpts from a book for the purpose of teaching it to you guys, then I'm allowed. As part of the question to be answered in examination, I can also refer to copyrighted works for the purpose of making a question paper for you. And in answer to such questions, you will be using copyrighted works to answer my questions. So all the three acts that I or you will do, we do not constitute infringement of copyright. The landmark case under this exception is the famous DU photocopy case. The name of the case was the Chancellor, Masters and Scholars of the University of Oxford versus Rameshwari Photocopy Services. Now we'll go through the facts. The professors imparting teaching in the Delhi School of Economics at DU had authorized Rameshwari Photocopy Services to prepare course packs by photocopying pages from the books published by the plaintiffs, and after binding the same, to supply those course packs to students charging 50 paisa per page. So the professors of DU, Delhi School of Economics College belonging to DU, they authorized Rameshwari photocopy services. So this was a very small shop, like very near to Delhi School of Economics, who used to provide all the notes to students. So they were given the authority by the professors that they could photocopy books of the University of Oxford and make course packs and sell them to students. The plaintiff here, university, they got to know somehow that their books are being sold as course packs, and the like the photocopy services are charging for them. So the work is now being commercialized because they're earning money out of it. It's not like they are just using it for lecture purposes. Now, what the court stated? The court stated that it was to be considered whether the inclusion of the copyrighted work in the course pack was justified for instructional purpose by the teacher, considering the course content, list of suggested readings, course objectives, etc. So the court said, look at what the course plan, so like the course handout that I made for you guys, we will look at that kind of a curriculum. What are the suggested readings? What are the contents of the course? What are the objectives? And whether or not the work of the plaintiff is required to be included in the course pack. It was held that the act was covered under the exception and there is no infringement. So, because it was for educational purposes. Now, what were the observations of the court? The expression teacher is not restricted to an individual teacher, but includes the whole institution. So, when we say teacher in the title, by a teacher or a pupil, by teacher, we don't only mean a separate teacher, we mean the whole college. The scope of expression in the course of instruction is not limited to the extent of delivering a lecture only, but extends beyond that. See, course of instruction is, if we literally interpret it, it would mean only the lecture that I deliver in 1 hour every day. Now, there is a lot that goes beyond that. So, I also have to prepare the lectures. I also have to prepare notes, PPTs, whatever I give to you guys. After the lecture or during your exams, you also have to read, you also have to go through a lot of sources. It might not be that you are not satisfied with the notes I give to you. So, you want other readings, you want to refer to other copyrighted works, you want to go to the internet and read articles. So, the course of instruction, the means of me delivering you knowledge on intellectual property law. It is not limited to delivering a lecture. That is what the court meant. So the point of saying this was that since it is apart from the lecture also, the course packs are required by students and teachers for the purpose of understanding the subject. It's not just that you can allow the work to be used only in the lecture and apart from that the work cannot be used. So the court favored Rameshwari photocopy and the infringement suit was rejected. Now, the final exception that we will be dealing with in class is reading or recitation of reasonable extracts from a published literary or dramatic work. Only a reasonable extract can be read out or recited. So, for example, I am delivering a speech in public. My speech is my copyright. I have not copied it from anyone. I want to quote a very famous philosopher's 4 or 5 lines that are, relevant for my speech. that are in context of my speech. I can recite it without infringing their copyright because I'm only taking a reasonable amount which is required for my speech. I'm not trying to recite his whole work. I'm not like, infringing upon the entirety of his work. I'm just referring to a reasonable extract. So when I do that, I am allowed under clause G. This is the eighth exception. Now, apart from this, we have some more exceptions that are like one-liners in section 52. Now, what you guys have to do is you will read all the exceptions, and if you don't understand any or you are confused in any, then you ask me in the next class, that is tomorrow. So today you will read all the exceptions. These were all the main ones that had cases, so I discussed them. Please go through the rest of them as well. Now that's it for infringement and exceptions. Now, is there any doubt regarding this topic? Otherwise, I'll move to the next topic. So just think if you have doubts. Okay, so now we are left with two very theoretical topics. There is not anything to understand here. So the first topic left is remedies against infringement, and the second topic that we have is authorities and institutions under Copyright Act. Now, both of them I have taken from different books since I don't know which books you have or even if you have any book. So I've scanned from the book itself because they were too theoretical. I didn't Anyway, so the remedies against infringement of copyrights are of three kinds. The first one is civil remedies, the second is criminal, and the third is administrative. Now, have you guys done CPC or is it like yet to come?
We are doing it this semester, ma'am.
Okay, so you already know what CPC is and what remedies are. So that's okay. So you have a background. So the first kind of remedy that a copyright owner can have against an infringer is that of civil remedies, wherein there are injunctions. You can restrain somebody from encroaching upon your work. So you can file for a permanent or interlocutory injunction. You can claim damages. Damages means compensation in like form of money or account of profit. You can ask for delivery of infringing copies and damages for conversion. Infringing copies, the definition we already did in section 2M, that whenever any copy is being imported or reproduced or adapted in contravention to the act, it is an infringing copies. So the person who is the owner of copyright, the plaintiff in the case, they can ask that all infringing copies be delivered to me so that there is nothing on the shelf that is fake. So these are the civil remedies available. For example, an author sues another for reproducing the copies of his books and selling them in the market. The civil remedies that he can claim here are stopping such infringement, injunction, damages in the form of monetary amount, account of profit, the profits which the defendant wrongly appropriated by sale of infringing copies. So he can ask for the profits. Damages for conversion can be claimed when an infringer stages a play based on the author's work, i.e., the infringer converts the form of the book without the consent of author and causes the infringement in copyright. So where there has been adaptation of the owner's work, he can claim the damages for conversion. Damages as in compensation that my work has been adapted or converted into some other form, so I want compensation for the same. These are the civil remedies that the owner can claim. There are criminal remedies, the imprisonment of the accused or imposition of fine or both, seizure of infringing copies. Imprisonment is not usually granted in copyright cases. It's like done in very rare cases, and even the imprisonment is just like time period of 2 months, 3 months, or something. So imprisonment is not generally awarded. Usually, civil remedies are only resorted to. Or seizure of infringing copies, that is definitely done by customs authorities or at borders, wherever they are caught. The third kind of remedies are administrative remedies. They consist of moving the registrar of copyrights to ban the import of infringing copies into India when the infringement is by way of such importation, and the delivery of confiscated infringing copies to the owner of copyright and seeking the delivery. Administrative remedies means you move to the copyright registrar. You don't go to the court. For civil and criminal, you have to approach the civil court and the criminal court respectively. For administrative remedies, if you don't want to involve yourself into litigation processes, you can straight away go to the registrar of copyrights. You can ask him to pass an order for to ban the import of infringing copies and to confiscate infringing copies and get those copies to the owner. So this is an administrative remedy that a person has. Now, how are authors' special rights protected? Meaning the moral rights that we discussed. So, special rights are also protectable. We've already done moral rights. Two kinds of moral rights we have. The first is the right of paternity or attribution, that a person can claim authorship, and the second is right of integrity, that you can prevent distortion, mutilation of your work. Jurisdiction of the courts is given under section 62. Now for remedies topic, you need not remember the section numbers. I will not ever ask you the question numbers of this. You only have to remember that there are three kinds of remedies and what all can be provided under civil, criminal and administrative. You don't have to go through the Bare Act for this topic. Jurisdiction of courts: every suit or civil proceeding in respect of infringement of copyright in any work or infringement in any other rights like moral rights or performers' rights or broadcasting rights shall be instituted in a district court having jurisdiction. So who has the jurisdiction? The district court. Now, I would also suggest that whatever PDF this is, you can, like, if you can, get a printout so that you can mark and the important things and just focus on that, because there are some extra things also in the book, but I could not cancel them out in the picture. In Dabur India versus KR Industry, the question that arose before the Supreme Court was whether a composite suit of infringement of copyright and passing off could be filed in a court having jurisdiction where the plaintiff actually and voluntarily resides. Okay, this is a very useless case, so let's not focus on this. Just know that the district court will have jurisdiction to try matters on copyright. Now, what are the defenses that the defendant can set up? This is important. All these points you should know. First, no copyright subsists in the work alleged to be infringed. So if the defendant can prove that the plaintiff in fact has no copyright at all, then he will not be charged with infringement. The plaintiff is not entitled to sue as he is not the owner of copyright. So even if he's the author, if you were able to prove that he is not the owner anymore because he assigned or licensed his copyright to someone, then also you will not be charged, because then the person does not have the locus to prove to institute the suit. The alleged copyright work itself is not original. It is in itself an infringed copy. So if the plaintiff's work you can prove is not original and is itself an infringing copy, then there is no question of infringement. The alleged copyright is not entitled to protection, being immoral, seditious, or otherwise against public policy. So if the plaintiff's work is having something immoral, vulgar, or against the public morality, or is seditious, seditious means against the country. If it has something triggering for particular people, then you can claim the defense. The defendant's work is independent and is not copied from the plaintiff's work. So the defendant, if he is able to prove under the doctrine of independent creation that he has not copied, or he can also prove in this that he did not have access to the work, then he will get the defense. The defendant's action does not constitute infringement of the plaintiff's work and is permissible under one or more of the exceptions to infringement under 52. So if it falls under any of the exceptions, then it is an automatic defense. The suit is barred by limitation. So Limitation Act basically tells you till what time period a particular suit can be filed. So if you go to the Limitation Act, you'll get all the provisions on the same. So the suit is barred by limitation, that you have exceeded the time period in which you could file the suit. The plaintiff is guilty of estoppel, lashes, or acquiescence or consent. These basically mean that the plaintiff himself knew that the defendant has been infringing the work but did not do anything about it earlier, and now because he wants to get damages or something out of the defendant, he's suddenly filing the suit. But he knew from before that he was copying his work, he did not utter a word. the infringement, or he has delayed in infringing the suit and he has no reasonable cause for it. So the court is not convinced that his delay was reasonable. And the last is the infringement was innocent, and on the date of infringement, the defendant was not aware and had no reasonable ground for believing that the copyright subsisted in the work. So, if he is able to prove that he had no knowledge, then he can be exempted. So, these are the defenses which may be set up by the defendant. Now, all these points we've covered under various topics in the whole unit, like independent creation, we know Section 52, and we know owner and author could be different people and only the owner can sue. So all the doctrines basically have been summarized in this topic. For example, an academician delivers a lecture in a seminar. The same is reported in a newspaper. He files a suit against the newspaper. The newspaper can set up the defense of fair dealing under Section 52, which permits reporting of current events in a newspaper, magazine, or periodical. So we did under fair dealing that they are allowed to use copyrighted works for criticism, reviews, and for reporting current events. So they were exempted. So this is the defense which the defendant can take. Now, what are the issues in a suit for infringement of copyright? What kind of issues can arise? Whether the plaintiff is entitled to file the suit. His ownership of the copyright is to be determined. So, author we understand, but is he also the owner is important. Only an author cannot institute a suit. He has to be the owner. Whether the copyright subsists in the work alleged to be infringed, whether the plaintiff's work has a valid copyright, whether it is original, not copied, etc. Does the defendant's action constitute infringement of copyright in the work? Has the defendant actually infringed? What are the standards of infringement? Has he fallen under those standards? Does the defendant's act come within the scope of any of the exemption? If he falls under any of the points in Section 52, he will not be charged. Whether the plaintiff is entitled to the remedy he's seeking. If he's, for example, seeking a criminal remedy, which is very harsh, so is the court convinced that the defendant deserves a criminal remedy in such a case if it is just a mere article being copied by someone? So does the person deserve a criminal punishment? So that has to be determined. Now, the three kind of civil remedies to which a plaintiff is entitled. First is an ante pillar order, interlocutory injunction, and damages or accounts for profit. What is an ante pillar order? The procedure of law always provides equal opportunities to both the parties to present their case. Now, all this you will also do in CPC. This is just for copyright purpose. It's very brief here. So just understand it only vaguely only for this purpose. The procedure of law always provides equal opportunities to both parties to present their case. However, in certain cases, the court may, on an application by the plaintiff, pass an ex parte order requiring the defendant to allow the plaintiff, accompanied by his attorney, to enter the premises and make inspection of the relevant documents and articles and remove them from safe custody. Such an order is called an ante pillar order. When a defendant, so an ex parte order is basically an order which is passed in the absence of the defendant. Okay. Now the details, I'm not getting into it. It's the CPC subject matter. Under an ante pillar order, the court can permit the plaintiff to visit the premises of the defendant with his attorney and take all the necessary documents or infringing copies. So if the court is convinced beyond reasonable doubt that infringement has taken place and they're all in the custody of defendant, they can permit such an act. Such orders are necessary when there exists an apprehension in the mind of the plaintiff and the court that following the regular procedure would give time to the defendant to destroy the relevant documents, defeating the ends of justice. So if there are litigation procedures are very lengthy and there are dates and everything, so it takes a long time to actually get the judgment in your hand in most cases. So if the court thinks or the plaintiff thinks that this will give an unnecessary time gap to the defendant that he can destroy all evidence and documents, then such an orders are passed. So these are passed only in exceptional circumstances, not usually passed. Exactly what I just said. So such an order is passed very cautiously by the court. only when the plaintiff makes the fullest possible disclosure of all material facts within his knowledge and the court is convinced thereby. So this is subjective. It is up to the discretion of the court. Now, what is an interlocutory injunction? Interlocutory injunction secures the immediate protection of copyright from an existent infringement or from the continuance of infringement or an anticipated infringement. Whether the infringement has already happened, it is in existence, whether it has been done since a like period prior to to the filing of the suit and to prevent the continuance of the infringement or to prevent a future infringement, you can file an interlocutory injunction. The plaintiff has to prove three things to convince the court here. A prima facie case exists. So, from the face of it, that the plaintiff is telling the truth. From the face of it, it should be apparent. Balance of convenience lies in his favor. Balance of convenience means that uh, the plaintiff is the party who is suffering losses, and he is the one who's telling the truth, and he is actually the favorable party which the court has to favor. The refusal to grant interlocutory injunction would cause irreparable injury to the plaintiff. If the plaintiff can prove this, then any of the three grounds are proved, an interlocutory injunction will be passed by the court. The defendant, if injured as a result of such injunction, is entitled to compensation by virtue of an undertaking as to damages which is made by the plaintiff. Such an undertaking on the part of the plaintiff is a condition precedent for the grant of interlocutory injunction. It may be refused if the interest of the plaintiff can be protected by ordering the defendant to keep an account of profits. So the injunction will not be passed if the plaintiff can be compensated by accounts of profit. The defendant has pleaded and established bona fide fair dealing. Fair dealing meaning he has established a defense under Section 52. The plaintiff has been guilty of undue delay in coming to the court. His conduct amounted to acquiescence in the infringement. There is substantial doubts that the plaintiff's right to succeed in the action. So the last 3 points basically mean if you knew about the infringement but you didn't say anything, if you have come late to the court without any reason, and there are doubts whether or not the plaintiff is telling the truth and that he will succeed in the case. Principles governing the grant of temporary injunction. Now, these are very theoretical. I would suggest you please read it yourself. There is nothing difficult in this. It is all very, uh, very theoretical. There is nothing to understand. So please go through this yourself because I don't want to waste time of the class in reading all this. So it's also if you do CPC and you will understand any of this anyway. This is nothing related to copyright. Is all CPC. So please go through this yourself and you can ask me doubts on phone or however you want. So the final topic under Copyright Act is that of the authorities and institutions under the Act. So your syllabus has Copyright Office, Copyright Board, and Copyright Societies. Now, what is the Copyright Office? For the purposes of the Act, an office called the Copyright Office is established. This office is under the immediate control of the Registrar of Copyright, who in turn acts under the superintendence and direction of the central government. So the Copyright Office comes under the central government. Under Section 10 of the Act, the central government appoints a registrar of copyrights, and it may also appoint one or more deputy registrars of copyrights to discharge the functions assigned to them by the registrar from time to time. The registrar will be the secretary of the Copyright Board also. What is the Copyright Board? The creation of a Copyright Board is a novel feature of the Copyright Act. The board was constituted in 1958 and has been functioning since then. Unlike a regular civil court, the board functions by meeting as often as it necessary and thus not a standing body. See, the Copyright Board was changed, the terminology was changed to an appellate board some years ago, and currently we don't have the board at all. So in 2021, the board was abolished. So now we own all the matters of copyright or any intellectual property right related matter, it goes directly to the court. So all the boards or tribunals under the all intellectual property rights have been abolished. So I don't think there's a point in reading all of this because it no longer exists, and all the books and bare acts don't have like this update yet because it happened this year only. So if you guys have bought a very recent edition of bare acts, then you might have this amendment. Otherwise, you will not. So we don't have a copyright board. Compulsory licensing of copyrighted works. So we had done compulsory, oh wait, we haven't done patent. So you don't know what a compulsory license is. A compulsory license is basically as opposed to a voluntary license. So like a voluntary license is a normal license that a person can give to another person. So I am an owner of copyright in a book and I can license my copyright to a publisher with my own wish and will. So this is a voluntary license. Now, for example, I have written a book on something which is of public importance. My book is based on something which is very important. Now, a publisher wants to publish my book because I am selling it at very high rates. My book costs, like, for example, 1 lakh for one copy, which is not affordable. So, on this ground, the publisher wants to like take license and sell it at lower prices. I refuse to give him the license. I don't want to give him the license. I feel I will suffer monetary losses, so I refuse. After my refusal, that publisher can go to the copyright office and he can file for a compulsory license. Compulsory license, as the term suggests, means that he can, without my consent, take license over my work. Now, how this works is once a compulsory license is granted, I will get royalty out of every copy, but I will not get all of the proceeds from the sale of each copy. That will go to the publisher. Now, granting a compulsory license is not very easy. The court takes into account a lot of things, whether or not the person who has applied for the compulsory license, the publisher in this case, he has a bona fide intention, or I am not selling my book at a reasonable price, or any of the grounds that my refusal is not reasonable, basically. If the defendant can prove, then a compulsory license will be granted with respect to my copyrighted work. This usually relates to works of societal importance or public importance, wherein a license is necessary for the work to be communicated to the public. So a book which could be a leisure book might not be given a compulsory license because it is a leisure reading novel. It is not something which is very important to be given to the public. The object of compulsory licensing is to publish a work which the author has refused to republish, etc. And by reason of such refusal, the work has been withheld from the public. So withholding the work from the public is the reason why compulsory licensing are granted in the first place. Now, what are the powers of the civil court in this respect? To summon and enforce attendance of any person and examine him on oath, to require the discovery and production of any document, to receive evidence in the form of affidavits, to issue commissions for the examination of witnesses or documents, requisition any to requisition any public sound recording or its copy from the court. So if there is any sound recording which is the subject matter of infringement suit, it can be also required or its copy be required in the court. To exercise power in respect of any other matter that may be prescribed. So all the powers of the civil court can be exercised for enforcing a suit of copyright infringement. For the purpose of enforcing attendance of witnesses, the local limits of the jurisdiction of the registrar or the copyright board will be the limits of territory of India. Okay, this is all useless theory. Okay, so the copyright board has been abolished, so there is no point in reading this also. Yeah, we'll just come to copyright societies. Also, guys, for the NCP, the paper will not be very theoretical. So please focus on the important like concepts which are of conceptual clarity or conceptual importance with respect to the core of copyright law. So I will most probably not give questions from such theoretical topics in this particular test. Obviously, in the future, you will get questions regarding these. But for NCP1, please focus on conceptual clarity and don't focus on these topics. And I might include some portion of trademarks also. We'll see that next week as to how the syllabus is proceeding. So you focus on the important parts of copyright and trademarks if included. Chapter 7 of the Act deals with copyright societies, their powers, procedure followed, and other related matters in sections 33 to 39A. Whereas an individual owner of copyright, in his individual capacity, continues to have the right to grant licenses in respect of his own works, the Act also provides for establishment, formation, and registration of certain societies consisting of authors, owners of copyright, and other interested persons. See, the point of copyright societies is collective regulation of works, collective regulation of transfers, adaptations, or any other rights that people exercise with respect to their work. So, a collective regulation or uniform regulation of those processes are the idea behind creating copyright societies. So it becomes easier if many people are collectively doing it. So there are copyright societies for performers, then for musicians and singers. So there is a copyright society which is, I think, headed by Javed Akhtar in the entertainment industry, which relates to musicians and lyricists. So Sonu Nigam, Atif Aslam, all the not Atif Aslam, I think, but Salim Suleiman, and there are a lot of singers that are part of those copyright societies, which help them in licensing their works and assigning their works and just regulating their copyright. A performing rights society, which was functioning before coming into force of the Copyright Amendment Act 1994, will be deemed to be a copyright society, and every such society should get itself registered within a period of 1 year from the date of the amendment. The 1994 Amendment Act inserted the provision on copyright societies. So what this is trying to say is, so any society that was functioning before the amendment will also be a registered copyright society. And within the commencement of this amendment, within 1 year, all the societies should get themselves registered. Prior to the 1994 amendment, section 33 to 36 dealt with performing rights societies only, which carried on the business of issuing or granting license. Who's this? Whoever's unmuted, please mute yourself. The activities of the societies were confined to copyright subsisting in literary, dramatic, musical works which can be performed in public. They're talking about the society that already existed. Now, how are the copyright societies registered? Chapter 5, the copyright rules from 12 to 14p deal with, now you again don't need to remember the numbers here, deal with the registration of copyright societies, conditions and eligibility therefore, and the administration of copyright societies. So any association of persons, whether incorporated or not, comprising 7 or more owners of copyright, formed for the purpose of carrying on business of issuing or granting licenses in respect of any class of works in which copyright subsists. This is what a copyright society is. So this is important. Association of persons, doesn't matter whether they're incorporated or not under the Companies Act they mean, which should comprise of at least 7 owners of copyright who want to carry on the business of licensing their works. They form a copyright society. Such an association may file an application with the Registrar of Copyright for submission to the central government for the grant of permission to carry on such business and the registration as a copyright society. This is only important. So the first paragraph of this particular para is important. You can mark it somehow. I don't know, write the page number or something. What are the conditions for the grant of permission to carry on copyright business? An applicant for registration as a copyright society will not be eligible unless, first, the instrument, which is the memorandum or article of association. So we have MOA and AOAs. Have you guys done Companies Act yet? Or is it like yet to be done? I think it comes in the 3rd year only, right? Company law. Have you done it?
No, ma'am, it's yet to come.
Okay, so you'll read about Memorandum of Association and MOA and Articles of Association, AOA, which basically are created by companies when they are entering into a new like partnership or association. So the instrument, which is the MOA or AOA, by which the applicant is established or incorporated, creates a commitment to deal with only copyright business and related activities and the applicant is willing to comply with the provisions of the act. So they have to declare in the MOA or AOA that they will only deal with business related to copyright and will not do anything else with the society, and they will follow the provisions of the Copyright Act. The applications must be accompanied by a true copy of the instrument, the MOA or AOA, the consent in writing of the individuals named in the application to act as members of the governing body, basically the 7 or more owners of copyright they're talking about here. The central government may either accept or reject the application within 60 days from the date of receipt through the registrar. Generally, an application is rejected if the applicant has no professional competence to carry on the business or no sufficient funds to maintain or manage the affairs. There exists another copyright society registered under the Act for administering the same class of works. So, if there is already a copyright society for lyricists and musicians under Javed Akhtar, so if another musician wants to create a separate copyright society, he will not be allowed. The central government believes that the applicant are not bona fide owners of copyright or they have not voluntarily signed the instrument. So if there is reason to believe that they are not actually owners of copyright, legal owners, or that they have not with the free consent signed the document, then they will not be permitted. Administration of rights of owners by copyright society and powers of the copyright society. So how does the Copyright Society administer the rights of owners, and what are the powers of the Copyright Society? Section 34 of the Act, read with rules 14G and H, deals with this aspect. A copyright society may accept from the owner of rights exclusive authorization to administer any right in any work by issue of licenses or collection of license fee or both, subject to the right of the owner to withdraw such authorization without prejudice to the rights of copyright society. Basically, a copyright owner can license his right of economic rights to the copyright society, that now the copyright society as a whole will administer my economic rights with respect to my work. But I can also withdraw it anytime I want. The society may enter into any contract with any foreign society or organization administering rights corresponding to rights under the Indian legislation, may entrust to such foreign society or organization such administration. Basically, you can also enter into contracts which deal in the same subject matter, that is a foreign society, meaning in some other country. You can also enter into foreign contracts. What are the general powers of copyright societies? The power to issue licenses in respect of copyright, the power to collect fee in pursuance of such licenses, and the power to distribute such fee among owners of rights after making deductions of his own expenses. If the authority of the society to grant license or to fix rates is challenged, the board has jurisdiction to decide the matter. Now the board had jurisdiction, now that we don't have the board. So any challenge or any complaint that arises with respect to the copyright society, now it will go to the courts. So this you have to remember, you will not find in any book or bare act, because this just happened some months back. So please remember, there is no board now. The Copyright Society are empowered to exercise their rights subject to the following duties. So there are 4 duties that the Copyright Society has. Duty to pay remuneration by framing a scheme for determining the quantum of remuneration payable to the individual copyright owners, having regard to the number of copies of work in circulation. So what royalty or money they will get out of the works, their works that are being licensed. Duty to submit to the registrar returns and reports, duty to maintain accounts and submit for audit, and the duty to submit themselves to the collective control of the owners of copyright whose rights they administer in India. Now, this is it for authorities under Copyright Act, and with this we wind up the copyright law. So we've wound it up before time. I thought tomorrow's class will also go into this. So now copyright is ended. Now you will go through all the notes. I will upload these two PDFs and the PPT on infringement and exceptions as well on Teams. Please go through this over the weekend, and till Monday you can come with any doubts that you have, and then you can study for the test. From tomorrow we will begin with the Trademarks Act, which is very interesting. Just if you liked copyright, you like trademarks also. It's very interesting. So That's it for today then. If there are no queries, we'll wind up the class. Okay, then I will see you guys tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.